Hey everyone, I want to help you make your podcast easier using the GOXLR mixer. Now, I want to say up front, I did not receive this mixer as a gift. I went out and bought this thing myself, so they did not send me this. This is not an ad. They don't even know I'm recording this. I just am a huge fan of this piece of hardware, and it has completely transformed the way that I create content every day. I have multiple podcasts. Nintendo Switchcraft is my 4-day-a-week podcast, which I record every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. StadiaCast I record on Sundays. So that's 5 podcasts that I record every single week, and it's all using the GOXLR mixer, which I am a huge, huge fan of. It is completely transformed how I record my podcast. Before I get into how I use it in order to make it easier for me to record my podcast, I want to take a second. I'm going to keep this as fast as I can and show and explain how I used to record my podcast. Nintendo Switchcraft is a Nintendo news podcast. By the way, you can get it over at runjumpstomper.com or wherever podcasts are found, or you can just go down below in the description down below and click a link. But it's a Nintendo news show, and what I would do is I would find a bunch of news topics that I was going to talk about. I would record each topic as its own segment. If I couldn't think of a good segue from one segment to the next, I would just stop recording. I would take a sound effect either from an old game or old video game commercial, and I would put it between 2 segments just to kind of separate those segments. Make it a little less jarring for the listener. And a lot of listeners basically said that they love those little interstitials that I have in my show. So I like doing that a lot, and my audience seems to appreciate it as well. Then I would record each segment. I would put in the little sound effects in between. At the beginning and end of the show, I would obviously have to edit in my intro and outro music, making sure everything sounded great, and then render it and upload it. That's the old way. Once I got the GOXLR, I stopped doing it that way. That way probably took me about an hour to edit a show, every single episode, which again, I'm doing 5 episodes of a podcast a week. That is a lot of work, and that's like 5 hours a week that I'm now saving using the GOXLR, because now editing takes me roughly 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at most, and that's if I have to go in and cut something out that I said. Now, what I will say is this: when I edit, I don't edit for content. So ums and ahs and things like that, I leave in because I feel like it's more authentic experience. If you don't like the ums and ahs, then obviously this is going to take you a little bit longer than it does me, but that's okay. What I do edit for is just sound quality, and even then it's just loudness. I want to make sure everything comes out at the end at negative 16 LUFS, because that is kind of the standard. All right, let me explain how I use my GOXLR. So here I've got my GOXLR. It's all set up ahead of time, and I'm not going to go through how to get the samples on it. Helicon Gaming has a bunch of really good tutorials that explain how to use this thing. I'm explaining how you can use this for your podcast. So let's start with sound effects. You know those sound effects that I told you about where I used to put them between segments? Instead of doing that in post, now I do it live because I have them on the sampler. So if you look right here, here's the sampler. I've got 4 buttons. Actually, I've got 12 buttons because I also have the orange and the white. Yellow is for Nintendo Switchcraft. Orange is for StadiaCast. This is for another podcast I used to do, but I don't do it anymore. So now this is just kind of not used. But it kind of used the same layout for everything. On the bottom left is my intro music. On the bottom right is my outro music. So now when I record the show, the intro music and outro music, they just happen live. I don't have to worry about doing it in post. Those little interstitial things that happen between segments when I can't think of a good segue, that's on the top left. On the anytime that I'm getting ready to finish talking about one topic and I want to move to another topic, I just reach up, I hit that button on the top left, and it plays a random, and this is what's really cool, it plays a random sound from a whole bunch of files that I have. So let's take a look at what I've got up there. So on the top left, it's a Mario or it's a Nintendo show, so I have a lot of Nintendo themed stuff. Like you can hear Boo kind of laughing, or the failure sound from Breath of the Wild when you're cooking. Or maybe an old commercial like this.
Double Dragon 2, the revenge for your Nintendo Entertainment System.
So what I did is I had all of these ahead of time because I was using these for the old way of doing things, but I would edit them in afterwards. Now I just do them on the fly. So I'll be talking about a subject, and because I've got the top left button, it says play fade, and then it's on random. So if I hit the button, it'll start playing. If I hit the button again, it will fade out. And every time I hit that button, it's going to play a random one. So no matter what I do,
that wasn't so bad.
It'll play a different sound each time I hit that button, which is awesome. What I used to do is I would go, okay, I kind of used that one recently. Now I'm going to use a different one. This is just all on the fly. And now what I do is I sit down, I record my podcast. Anytime I need to come up with a segue, I just hit that button and I'm all set. Something else that I like to do is I get my audience to participate a little bit by sending in these clips of them saying who they are, where they're from, and that, you're listening to Switchcraft or something like that. So they all send those in, and those are on the top right button. So my top left button is my segue sound effects. The top right button is audience participation, and that sounds like this.
Hey listeners, this is Joel Mead 24 from the Run Jump Stomp Discord community. You're listening to Nintendo Switchcraft.
All right, so Run Jump Stomp Discord is my Discord. So all I do is hit that button and it plays a random listener. It's a different person each time. Well, I mean, it's random, so sometimes you get the same one twice in a row, but it's not a big deal. So basically, I've got those two things set up. Then on the bottom left, I've got my intro music, and on the bottom right, I've got my outro music. So what's the difference between my intro and outro music? Nothing. It's the same music, except the intro music is loud at first and slowly fades out, and then the outro music slowly fades up and gets loud at the end. And the reason I do that is because I will play the intro music and then I start talking over it once it's gotten quiet enough. And you're just going to have to kind of get a feel for it. So typically, if I'm doing an episode of Nintendo Switchcraft, it'll look like this. On episode 373 of Nintendo Switchcraft, Story 1 summary, Story 2 summary, Story 3 summary. Then after I say that, I hit a random listener.
This is Jetty from New South Wales, and you're listening to Nintendo Switchcraft.
And then while they're talking, I hit the music to start fading in right at the tail end of them talking. So they're talking, and then I hit that button. Here, let me show you one more time.
I'm Victor from North Carolina. Don't get distracted by shiny things because you're listening
now I'm
to
hitting
Nintendo
the music.
Switchcraft.
And I'll fade that away so that we don't have to hear it. So then I hit the music and the music starts playing. The music gets louder and louder. And when it's done, when it's almost done playing, then I start doing, I start actually doing the show. Actually, here I will show you. So I just ended up playing one of those things from somebody who's, you're listening to Switchcraft. Music starts playing like this. It's almost done. And then at this point right here, I start talking about the beginning of the show, and I kind of tell everybody where they can go find stuff. And then the music slowly fades out over time. I don't have to do anything. So at the beginning of the show, I'm hitting two buttons, and it sounds really, really professional. At least a lot of people have told me that it does. I've gotten a lot of compliments on the production quality of my show. And doing this all live is so much less time consuming than doing it in post after the fact. It's a lot of work to do it afterwards. All right. So now that I've got that done, let's say I'm talking about topic 1 and I can't think of a segue to get to topic 2. I say blah, 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 blah. And here we go for topic 2.
Color? Introducing Game Gear from Sega. The full-color portable video game system that separates the men from the boys. Game Gear from Sega.
And then I come in with topic 2. And that's basically how it works. So what do you do? Oh gosh, I guess I should probably show the end of the show. So then at the very end of the show, I'm talking about, you know, where people can find this or where people can find that and ways to support the show and things like that. And at the very end, I always say, and here comes the music, which is, I forget the title of it, but it's by Noteblock. You guys should check it out. So I hit this button and the music starts to slowly come up. And the reason that it does it this way is because I've edited it so that it slowly gets louder over time. And let me just fade it away so we don't have to listen to it. So that's on the bottom right sampler button. So the top left, random sound effects. The top right, random audience members. The bottom left is intro music. The bottom right is my outro music. Now, if you want to do it the way that I do, then it's going to take a little work ahead of time. So every single one of the files that I have on my top left button here, and there are lots of them. I'm going to scroll through right now. You can see lots and lots of all of these different ads and sound effects. You know, you've got all of these different things.
Atari introduces the woman of the...
I've got all of these different sound effects, right? They are all normalized to -16 LUFS. And the reason for that is because that's what I normalize my entire podcast at, -16 LUFS. So when that sound is playing, it is roughly the same volume as my voice when I am recording. You may I would recommend -16 LUFS. That's my recommendation to you. If you are not sure what I mean by that, let me show you. Let's say that I have a sound effect that is that I want to play on my podcast. Either those sound effects like old video game commercials, or something like where the caller has called in and left a voicemail. I want this to be -16 LUFS. Now, I'm using Reaper. You can use whatever your digital audio workstation is. I like Reaper. It's very cheap. It's only $60, or you can even use it for free and it will nag you every time that you start it up. But Reaper's awesome. You should definitely pay for it if you get it. So all I do is I use Reaper and the SWS extension, which gives me this loudness button right here. And I analyze that. And then I normalize it to -16 LUFS. And now it's the same volume as everything else. And that I went through and I did that with every single sample that I had, which is a lot of them. So it was a lot of work up front. But once I had it done, now recording the podcast is super smooth. The same thing, I do exactly the same thing with my intro and outro music. So this is not my intro music. My intro music is by Noteblock. This is a song called Luigi's Mansion's Credits in 8-bit by Bulby. I do have permission to use this music as well. So basically what I do is let's say I want to find this song right here. Right here. Like, let's say I want that to be my theme song for my podcast. All right. So I'm going to trim the beginning of that. I get rid of that, bring it over here. And now I only want my intro music to be about 30 seconds long, maybe total, right? Bam. So there's my theme song music. The problem is, and I've got it turned down. If you look at my this is turned way down because this is very loud. You don't want your music to be super loud. So what I do, I go into the extensions, I go into loudness, I analyze it. Right now it's -12.3 LUFS. I normalize it to -23 because I want the music to be quieter than my voice, so that when I hit the button to play the music, I can talk over it. That is very, very important for me to be able to do. So now it's normalized to negative 23 LUFS, right? What I end up doing for intro music is I have it fade out. For outro music, I have it fade in. So the outro music will slowly get louder and louder, and the intro music will slowly get quieter and quieter. All right. The intro music, it's probably better to have a faster drop off with the intro music, because you don't want the intro music going on forever. So I'd probably start talking right around this area right here, and you would still hear the intro music getting quieter behind me in the background. So use your digital audio workstation to go through and normalize all of your sound effects to be negative 16 LUFS, all of your music to be negative 23 LUFS. Those are the levels that work for me. I think that they work really, really well. And once you have that, then on your GOXLR, all I do is my sampler for Nintendo Switchcraft is the top left is sound effects, top right is listeners calling in, bottom left is my intro music, and bottom right is my outro music. And the way I've got it set up for the top left, which is a random sound effect, I say play fade. I've got it on random, so it just plays a random thing here. Top right is play stop, and that's random, and it doesn't matter what you pick here. I just have it play stop. And then bottom left is play fade, and that's sequential, but it doesn't really matter because I only have one. And you can even see this waveform is slowly getting louder and then gets quieter. And then my bottom right slowly gets louder and then quiets out, and you probably want to do that as well. So for your outro music, it should actually probably look like this, where it slowly gets louder and then fades away so that it slowly gets nice and quiet at the end. And that's how I've got my GOXLR set up to record my podcast. It works wonderful. It works absolutely wonderful. So I went from spending probably an hour every episode to edit, and now all I do to edit my podcast, which is, it's ridiculous how little time it takes. No, I don't want to save. I'm going to open up my most recent episode. So here's my most recent episode. The only thing I do is I normalize this to negative 16 LUFS, and then I just make sure that I fade out at the end a little bit. And obviously, honestly, this part right here, probably not even that important. So that is how I use the GOXLR to record my podcast. It is a wonderful tool for podcasters and Twitch streamers alike. I'm a huge, huge fan of it, and I recommend it to anybody who has the money to spend on. It's a very expensive piece of equipment, but in the hours that it saves me about 5 hours a week, which is an insane amount of time. So this is a wonderful piece of equipment, and I am a huge fan of it. And not an ad, but damn, I love it. So anyway, if you are interested in checking out my podcast, you can find it over at runjumpstomp.com. It is called Nintendo Switchcraft. You can just look for it in any podcast app. You can look for my other show, StadiaCast, all about Google Stadia. Also at runjumpstomp.com or wherever podcasts are downloaded. And if you found this video to be useful at all, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. And I may do more podcasting tips like this. Thank you guys very much for watching. And gosh, we got it done in less than 20 minutes. Goodbye.